The Matthew books. Matthew, Tell Me About Heaven, a first-hand description of the afterlife, by Suzanne Ward, published by Matthew Books. Part 1. Matthew, Communion with Matthew, Episode 2. I was stunned when I learned that I talked not only with my Matthew, but also his cumulative soul. Now and always his own unique inviolate self, Matthew also is an inseparable part of a much greater being who is more spiritually evolved and knowledgeable than its individual lifetimes. So that I could understand this shocking revelation, I asked him for a simple explanation about his relationship as my son to his cumulative soul. And he told me this. I was to think of all creation as an ocean, of his cumulative soul as a cup of ocean water, and of his soul as only Matthew as a drop of water I took from the cup. The drop was now its own entity, separate from the other drops that combined were the cupful, and from the ocean where all the drops originated. Both the single drop and the cupful retained the same elements as the ocean, and for a while they had a life independent of their origin and each other, but eventually both would return to the ocean. Perhaps the drop would evaporate into the air, like countless drops before it, and rise to help form a cloud that would release its vapor into rain that would fall into the ocean. Perhaps the cup would spill, letting all of its drops mingle with the sand, where soon the tide would rush in to cover that part of the shore. Over and over, the single drop, the cupful of drops, the ocean that gave them their beginning and would take them back. Yet never would the individual identity and experiencing of the drop or the cupful be lost. This timeless, indestructible interconnectedness acknowledges the uniqueness and value of each tiny drop, each soul, and each cupful, cumulative soul, as parts of the ocean, all of creation. Matthew said this interconnectedness is true of everyone's soul, not only when we reach his world, but constantly, continuously, eternally, we are inseparable from all other souls and our Creator. At soul level, we do know this. However, most of us don't consciously know it during Earth lifetimes. Because Matthew is the most recent part of his cumulative soul in relation to me, he's the predominant personality in our communion. He refers to his lifetime as my son as his Matthew personage. In the beginning, it was difficult for me to think about two Matthews, my son and the greater soul that includes my son. But with time, the unnatural association became completely natural. I call both Matthew, both call me mother, and rightly so, as it is only Matthew with whom I'm communicating, whether his personage or cumulative soul is speaking. My perspective of the two Matthews is his gaining such great knowledge during a long absence that, upon his return, even to me he sometimes seems a stranger, because I missed all of his incremental growth stages. Other times he is the young man I remember so well, yet knew only partly, because a mother never can completely know the mind and heart of her child, even one who has never left home. In the beginning, only the personage was apparent because the topics were personal to me and to Matthew, so that aspect of his cumulative soul naturally was predominant, and I could easily imagine my teenage son talking with his usual enthusiasm. Nevertheless, in our communication, just as in every other facet of his spirit life, he draws upon the multiple lifetime experiences and knowledge that form the total essence of his cumulative soul. And as his information advanced in complexity, his presentation changed into a learned, didactic style. Often, even within the same conversation, the styles are seesaw fashion. Matthew told me that my interest and reaction to what I hear are registered as energy vibrations. When I'm feeling close in spirit to him, my vibration evokes his personage. And when my interest in the information is more academic than personal, that vibration calls forth his cumulative soul. When the personage is dominant, Matthew's voice is expressive and his speech is animated and rambling, sometimes flippant. His exuberance, pet expressions, and sense of humor that I used to enjoy so much still flavor his comments. Except that Matthew does a lot more talking than I. He gives long answers to my short questions. We have a perfectly natural conversation with all the affection and pleasure of any mother and son chatting on earth. The voice of the cumulative soul is certain and steady, and the articulate speaking is like a professor presenting a lecture, whereas Matthew's personage says his bit and then pauses to give my turn. His cumulative soul continues until the dissertation is complete or my vibration switches. Both answer questions in my mind and address my reactions to what they're telling me. During the first few sittings with primarily the cumulative soul speaking, I felt more amazement than closeness as I recorded the transmissions. It didn't seem at all like my Matthew, and I felt as if I were back in school taking lecture notes. This bothered me, but I never mentioned it. One morning, his cumulative soul, said, "I know you have been concerned about your feelings toward me that sometimes are less personal than they used to be. Don't be, Mother. It is an overlayer of feeling that provides the emotional distancing necessary for you to respect my words as coming from a higher source than your 17-year-old Earth son." I was relieved to hear that, but I wasn't surprised that he knew of my discomfort. I learned almost immediately that he knows many of my thoughts and feelings, although he has assured me of complete privacy of thought, feeling, and action when I wish. When I am open telepathically in either sittings or strong thoughts of him at any moment, there is no place in my mind or heart he cannot touch. This is what enables him to address my thoughts and feelings as he continues talking without any interruptions from me. From images Matthew sends me, I can see him alone or with others in whatever setting he wants to show me. When his comments make me laugh, I hear and sometimes also see him laughing with me. I feel the warmth of his embrace just as surely as I do the hugs of someone on earth. In our sittings, there is no distance between us.